Welcome, everyone. If you're just joining us, don't be too surprised if you feel like, oh, what happened to Zoom? I promise everything is in order, or at least I think it is. And yeah, we're going to have some fun today, and we're going to try something a little new, but the main focus will definitely be to help you with your exams. So don't worry, that hasn't changed. And for those who are old hands at this, you know how we start. We start with a little practice question. So, and then I'll introduce myself a bit more after that. But let's just start with seeing, can you answer these two multiple choice questions? We'll call this question number one. Where's my pen? Here it is. So we'll call this one question number one, and we'll call this one question number two. And then if you could answer in the chat by saying like 1A or 2B. I want to see what the general sentiment is. And then we'll start once we have enough people here. Okay. So Coco, you were saying you're a Liverpool fan. It was quite tough about 2 weeks ago. It was a pretty brutal afternoon, but I must admit, your team played well.
Thank you very much. We also got our butt kicked a while back. Actually, 2 days ago, we got our butt kicked. So we aren't very happy about that, but I think we've been doing okay so far.
Yeah, you're playing good football. It's attractive to watch.
Yes,
I mean, I'm not a Liverpool fan, but they play nice football to watch.
We're very happy with our strikers. You
got lots of them.
Yeah.
All right. So to all our students who are probably kind of still joining us, if you could just give us like a little hello, a shout out or something in the chat. There is no audio option today, but we'd love to hear from you. So please do let us know. Okay. Can you hear me okay, Coco?
Yeah, I hear you perfect. No issues here.
Let's draw some pictures. I was much better yesterday with drawing. My favorite sport is tennis. So let's see if I can draw there's meant to be a tennis court forming. What does it look like? There. Too many lines. Okay, so just a reminder for those in the live stream, while we're waiting for everyone to join us, you are attempting these two questions, which are typical paper 1 questions for grade 11. And the main purpose of today's lesson is going to be revising for the grade 11 end of year maths exam. And so this is just a warm-up question. The first one is about equations and formulas. The second one is about quadratic equations. And once you know the answer, you simply put in the chat like 1A if you think this is the answer. And that's the way we're interacting today. Aha. So the recording has begun.
Yeah, that is the one thing I actually did forget, but I waited for the right moment. I'm very sorry.
Not a problem.
Okay, though.
Okay,
right.
so Coco, if you could just let me know, is there anyone in the live stream? I can start doing some teaching, but I just want to know who are we? Are we still waiting for students to kind of figure out to come across from Zoom, as far as you can tell?
Yes, we've got about 6 kids in the chat. Caleb is here. Yeah, and Tato as well.
Yes.
And Valerie is here. So that's there's someone called Kino27. I'm not sure who they are.
Okay, no, those are all regulars. Our regulars are here. Welcome. Give me the names again. So it's Valerie,
Caleb, and Tato.
Yes.
And there's someone called Kino27 who says YOLO. So I'm not really sure who that is.
Okay. So welcome everyone. I would like, I know this is a bit different today, but at the same time, we want to get you ready for your exams. So please, could you respond to these 2 questions? Question 1 is a substitution question. So it says, for the formula C squared equals A squared plus B squared, what is the value of C? And I give you that A is 7 and B is 24. So this is a typical question from question 1 in paper 1. And so I want to know, what is the answer that you think it is? And I want you to put that in the chat, which I know is on YouTube. And then the second question is to solve the equation x times 10x minus 1. I'll give you a little hint. You're going to need to start by multiplying out. And so your first step is going to be 10x squared minus x equals 2. Now, if you're feeling that that's too much, that's fine. Just do the best you can and put your answer in the chat. And then I will explain further in a moment. Okay. So at 10 past, Coco, I'm going to start teaching properly. If you could just keep me, if you could just tell me what the answers are coming through. So let's say you get 3 A's and 2 B's, or whatever you see in the chat, because then I know you've pace. Yeah.
I'm seeing quite a few B's for number 1. So I've got 1 is B, 2 is C. I think they're about
B
a couple of 1 is B and 2 is C. That's what I'm getting.
Okay, so that's the majority of opinions. Well, let's see what the correct answer is going to be. I actually have I have the answers sort of written here, and if we need to, we'll go into a bit more detail, but I think for now, so it's 25. So the right answer was 25, which is B. So that's correct. So most students are getting that correct. So I'm not going to go into more detail. And then you said for the next one, it was, excuse me, I have to do a little bit more gymnastics between my, so again, well done, guys. You are flying today. That is correct. Now, just to summarize what had to happen, which you've probably done, you have to move everything to one side, then factorize this quadratic equation, set them both equal to 0, and then you'd get these answers here. Okay. So like I said, today is actually the beginning of a new session, a new set of lessons. And so I just want to do a little intro on myself in case some people are new. So high school maths teacher, I'm based in Cape Town, been teaching for many years, and I'm looking to just share my experience with you so that you can ace your exams or do as well as you can. Okay, so, and that's me sitting in my happy flat in Cape Town. I want to give a little bit of an overview of when teachers set exams, and I also want to give you an overview of the grade 11 exams. And so whenever teachers set exams, it's important to realize that not every section gets the same allocation. And so in this particular breakdown that I've got of the grade 11 exams, this is what the government has said should be guiding us. And so the first 2 lessons are going to be based around paper 1, and then the second 2 lessons will be based around paper 2. Now, when you study, you want to make sure that you allocate your time roughly in proportion to what has a lot of marks. So today we'll be spending a fair amount of time on general algebra, and then probability, and a little bit of number patterns if we get there. And then in the second lesson, we're going to talk about functions and graphs and finance. So just to give you an overview, and then the second lessons will go into paper 2. Now, it turns out that when teachers set exams, they set different types of questions. And so that's, you basically have 4 main types. You have basic knowledge recall. Then when you have what is considered routine procedures, excuse my writing, routine. Then you have what's called complex procedures. And then you have what's called problem solving. I'll just leave it like that. Now, if you think about where most of whenever you're starting to study, you should start by focusing on these 2 over here. So basic knowledge and routine. And then once you get better, you can move on to these questions over here. If you move on to these without having built up a foundation, you essentially are wasting time. And you could rather spend your time trying to get the knowledge and routine questions done. And in each of these topics, you want to make sure that you definitely do the knowledge and the routine questions in each of these topics. So I'm going to refer to that a couple of times today, but I just want you to keep it in mind that sometimes I tell my students that's exam technique. You start by making sure you do these questions first. And a lot of what we're going to practice today is going to be around these types of questions. Coco, can you sort of see I know I'm writing quite big, but can you see everything reasonably clearly? Okay. So just to show you, I know you don't want to read all the boring stuff from the syllabus, but if you look at what the government says, they say, look, knowledge 20%, routine procedures 35%, and here's the complex procedures and the problem solving we were talking about. So I will point this out from you from time to time, but my main reason for telling you this is just so you know why I'm focusing on certain questions like these 2. Okay, I want us to do some more practice questions from paper 1. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to set you a couple of questions, and I'm going to make sure that my mouse is better behaved than it's currently. Okay, I want you all to do that question. We're going to call this question number 3. And I want you to try and get an answer for that. And you can write 3A, B, C, or D. This is a question about a concept called factorization. And there's 3 main ways that we factorize. It's the highest common factor. It's the difference of 2 squares. And then there's the method called trinomial factorization. And then sometimes we also include a method on something called grouping, but that's really just highest common factor on steroids. So your only task is to see, can you factorize this question? Coco, I was asking, can you see okay? Is everything clear?
Yeah, I see everything perfectly fine on my side.
Okay.
Please, guys, remember to just tell us in the chat if things are looking a little weird. I think Setri says her screen is kind of blurry, but I see you fine, Mr. S. So I'm not sure if maybe it has something to do with her connection.
And then the students, what they need to be doing is they should be saying 3A, 3B, 3C, or something like that. And if they have a question about, okay, I don't even know how to do this, just let me know. Feel free to give me, Coco will give me the feedback. I just want to know if they need a little bit of an explanation, I'll do it, but this is more of a warm up at this stage.
Yeah. Okay.
So the things I'd be thinking about is what technique do I use? And I'll give you a hint now. The technique you should be using is the highest common factor technique. So highest common factor. And then you have to ask yourself, well, there are 2 terms here. What do I need to do to get the highest common factor?
So you minus it.
Yeah. Well, you can.
Mr. F, sorry
yeah.
to interrupt. Could you zoom into the question a little bit?
Yeah.
Like
That's the magic of a trackpad. How's that?
That's perfect. Thank you very much.
And to all my students at home, please do let us know if you can't see clearly. The wonderful thing about being live is you can literally change things live. So let that feedback come through. Okay, do we have any answers coming through yet? Okay, so I'm going to do this one with you. And the highest common factor that I see, if you're really stuck, you can write out these terms, from scratch. And what you see basically is that each of these has a y. So each of these has this y, and each of these has at least a 5. So my highest common factor is going to be 5y. And then all I have to ask myself is, what do I times 5y by to get 5y squared? So it's y. And here, how do I get 15y? I just times it by 3. And so the answer should be C. Okay. Oh, doesn't look so happy, but okay. Are there any questions about that one, everyone? Okay, because this is the foundation. If you think about question 1, factorizing is at the heart of a lot of question 1 in grade 11. Okay, then I'm going to move on. And I'm going to give you one little hint. You can either factorize this one or you can use the formula. Both will work. Actually, no, this is a factorizing. You have to use normal techniques. So I want you to try and do that one. And for those who are really on fire, I want you to try and factorize this one. So we're going to call these questions 4 and 5. And these are just warm-up questions around factorization, which is the bread and butter marks of grade 11 paper 1. This is like, guys, if you don't get this, like this should be your priority. You put these in the bank. And if I don't know what method you use, but often in my classes, I would teach my students this method, where I draw up that and I look at the coefficient of the middle term, which in this case is going to be a +1. Okay. So, and then I look at the factors of 6 and I look at the factors of 2. So let's see if we can make that balance. Now we could use 3 and 2, or we could use 6 and 1. I'm going to have to zoom in a little bit. There we go. Let's see if I can balance this. What have we got? I need to get to +1. I think that may work. And then a plus and a minus. Okay, so for question 1, I'm getting 3x plus 2 times 2x minus 1. Let's just check it quickly. I get my 6x squared. I get minus 3x. I get plus 4x. I get minus 2. And so I should get D. So Coco, could you give me a sense of, did students get that? Were they getting D? Maybe ask them to give us a thumbs up or a thumbs down. How are they feeling? Do they need a little factorization lesson?
Yeah, I'll tell you what, Mr. S, I think there's a bit of a lag, about a 10-second lag. So I think I will be getting some answers very soon. Let's give it a second.
We'll give it some time. There's really no need to. For those students who are feeling comfortable with factorization, I've put the next question on the board. It's a little bit tougher, but at the moment, we're just focusing on question 4, which really is your basic factorization type question. And I'm using a different technique now. I'm not using a highest common factor, but rather I'm using this trinomial cross method, which I can explain to you, but I'm thinking most of you would have seen it before. So I'm mainly just checking to see that you have seen it. Okay. Okay. So if you look at how we factorize a trinomial, generally speaking, I start by drawing a cross. And then what I do is I look for the number in front of the middle term. In this case, in front of plus x is a +1. And then what I do is I look at the other two numbers. And basically, I'm going to put a number here, and I'm going to put a number here, and a number here, and a number here. And when obviously it looks like a lot of choosing, but when I put the numbers here and I multiply along these lines, the sum must give me +1. So if I look at 6, I have two choices. I can either choose 6 and 1 or 3 and 2. I chose 3 and 2. If it didn't work, I would have come back to it and checked it again. But the important bit is when I multiply 3 times 2, I get 6. Then I've got this other number 2 over here. And that number, basically 2 is a prime number. And so I know that it's going to be 2 and 1 that go into the empty boxes. The question is, where do I put the 2 and 1? And I put the 2 here because 2 times 2, or 2 times +2, gives me +4. And then 3 times -1 gives me -3. And together that gives me the +1 that I need. Now, the final step that students sometimes find confusing is I read off horizontally. So in this case, I attach an x to the side, so 3x + 2, and then I read along the bottom 2x - 1, and that's where I got this from. I know that's not a full explanation. I can do, if there is demand, I could do a completely different page and explain it, but I think for now I'm gonna move on. Coco, is there anything from your side? Any questions, comments from the students?
No, other than a bit of confusion with how you got to the question, I think we should be okay.
Okay, I'm going to go in a bit more detail on the second part now. So let's do the second one together as an example. Okay, so this is a harder question. This is probably worth about 4 marks in a typical exam. Now, if you look at this question has 2 terms. There's the 2w to the power of 4, and then there's the 162. Now, whenever you factorize, you ask yourself first, is there a highest common factor? So if there is, you take that out. So when we're doing factorization, I always think of this order of precedence. So first we look for a highest common factor, then we look for the difference of 2 squares, and only then after that do we look for a trinomial. So my checklist says, okay, look, I found one, it's 2. So if I take out the common factor of 2, what goes inside the brackets? Well, clearly it has to be w to the 4 because that multiplied together gives me the original. And then I have to know my maths multiplying a little bit, but basically if I take 162 and divide it by 2, and you'll see that you get 81. Okay, so now what you've done is you've factorized the original expression, but there's a problem. The problem is that this expression can be factorized further. Now, we go through this link over here again. Is it a highest common factor? No. But this time, there is a difference of 2 squares. And so what I like to do, let me just change my writing back to the red. What I like to do is I write out 2 brackets, because whenever we use the difference of 2 squares factorization method, we know there's going to be 2 parts. And the way difference of 2 squares works is we write the square root of the first term. So the first term is this w to the 4. So I write the first term there, w squared and w squared. and then I put a plus and a minus, and then I say, what is the square root of the second square, which is this one here? Well, the square root of 81 is 9. And so I'm going to put a plus 9 and a minus 9. So now I've actually got a long looking bracket, but you'll also notice that none of the options match this above. And that's because there, in fact, is even one more thing. This is still the difference of two squares. Okay, so this is probably a 5-mark question, but it's nice because it's showing you how much factorization can unfold. Now, there's no such thing as a sum of two squares. There's only a difference of two squares. And so that's why I'm only breaking up the w squared minus 9. Okay, so let's repeat this process. Square root of the first square. Square root of w squared is w. So I'm going to put that there. Now I'm going to say minus and a plus and a minus. And then I'm going to say, what's the square root of 9? It's just going to be plus 3 and minus 3. Now you may say, hold on, does this process ever end? It just seems to go on forever. But you'll notice now there are no more difference of two squares. There are also no more trinomials. So I've fully factorized this. That's why they said in this question, factor completely. So can we match this to any of them? It looks to me like D is the answer. Okay. So Coco, could we just ask the students quickly, are they finding this process helpful? I don't, my experience suggests I shouldn't move on from the warm-up until we've kind of got a feel for these things. So if they could just give us like a thumbs up if this is helping, and a thumbs down if it's not. I know we have to wait a little bit, but if you could just get that sense from the students.
Well, Caleb doesn't seem to know the cross message, so he is asking if he could get back to it. But I think maybe if Caleb could have a look on our app, on the Watobe app, he'll find a lot of those to practice with.
Okay,
so
I can do one. I can do one with him. Let's move to a typical question 1. Okay, so this is a question 1. But I just want to see a thumbs. I just want to also get a feel for how the students are feeling. Now, this is a typical question 1. Now, if we look at this, the questions are slightly different. It says solve for X, but I can still use some of these questions to illustrate the ideas I've spoken about. Now, at the very beginning, I said to you, some questions will be complex procedures or problem-solving type questions, which initially may not be worth trying to do them straight away if you feel horribly confused. And one of those questions is this 1.3. So for now, I'm just going to ignore that 1.3 because it is a question which requires scaffolding. But if you look at a question like 1.1.1 or 1.1.2, these are questions that are either knowledge or routine procedures. And so we really need to make sure that we are cashing in on these questions. Okay. Now, at the moment, I can almost artificially, or let me answer the first question for you, and then I'll show you how the trinomial factorizing method works afterwards. Okay. So the question says solve for X. And in this particular case, the question that I'm pointing my attention to is 1.1.1. Now, in this question, it's already been factorized. So if you look at this, you can multiply one bracket by the other. So the way we're going to answer this question is basically just by saying, well, the only way this can be true is if 2x minus 3 equals 0, or if x plus 7 equals 0. So those are the two branches. Now, from there, we use the idea of when we solve an equation, as long as we always do the same thing to both sides, we can solve it. So on this left-hand side, I'm going to add 3 to both sides. And when I do that, I'm going to get that step. On this side, I'm going to take away 7 from both sides. And when I do that, I get that step. Now, the problem is, if I look at this question here, it still has a 2 next to it. Okay, so what I need to do is divide both sides by 2 And if I do that, my answer should be 3 over 2. Okay, so in closing, this question, the answer is going to be 3 over 2, or x is minus 7. And that's a 2-mark question, and that makes sense. But what I know from experience is a lot of students will actually not do this. And I'll show you what they'll do. A lot of students will see this question, and because they're so used to that, not reading the question properly, they'll start multiplying this out. And if they multiply it out, they're going to get 2x squared plus 14x minus 3x minus 21. So I've just basically used what's called FOIL, where I've done that, and I've multiplied each of the terms together. And if you get to this step, you get a little bit stuck. Like some people will say, okay, I know, sorry, my pens are so huge. I know that I need to put these two like terms together. So I get 2x squared plus 11x minus 21. But then I'm still a bit stuck. And so this is where actually you've gone a little bit in circles. All that you're going to do now is you would factorize this to solve this equation. And so this is this cross method that I was talking about. If I want to factorize this expression, I look and see, is there a highest common factor? No. So there's no highest common factor, so I can't use that. Is there a difference of 2 squares?
No.
I can't use that. Is it a trinomial? Yes, it's got 3 terms, and so possibly I could factorize it using normal factorization methods. I could also use what's called the formula, but I'll do that in the second question. Okay, so I draw this cross, and all this cross does is it allows us to balance the cross multiplication. So I'm going to say plus 11 because of the 11 in front of the middle term. Now I'm going to say, I'm going to draw my boxes. I'm going to put a box here, a box here, a box here, and a box here. And what I need to do, I think, is there a mute? I think I hear some background noise. Someone, Coco, could you just check if someone else is on the Zoom call just quickly? So if I look now, I look to the front number, which is 2. Now 2 is a prime, so it's not very, it's 2. Excuse the pun. It is, let's make it, I'm going to put a 2 and a 1. Now, when I multiply 2 by 1, I get my 2. So that's all good. Now I have a choice. I have the number 21. And what are the factors of 21? Well, I could have 7 and 3, because 7 times 3, or I could have 21 and 1. I feel like 7 and 3 is going to be more likely to give me the right answer. But there's a bit of guesstimation there. I'm going to use 7 and 3. So the question is, where do I have to put the 7? Do I put it up here or do I put it down here? And this is where I need to look at the number. And if I put a 7 here and I make it a plus 7, well, 2 times plus 7 is 14. And then if I put that's too much. But if I put a minus 3 here, then I'm going to get let's just move this across. And then let me quickly get out my other pens. I need a different color. I could just, there we go. So now 2 times plus 7 is 14 and 1 times minus 3 is minus 3. And if you add those together, you get plus 11. Now, the final step is just to read these off. So if you read these off horizontally, you're going to get 2x minus 3, and you're attaching x's to this side. And you're going to get x plus 7, which you'll notice is it gets us all the way back to how we started. But the reason I did that is I wanted to show you the method that is how you factorize like that. Okay, so I hope that was helpful. I'm going to move on now. And I would recommend that, like Coco said, if you go to the YouTube, if you go to the Watobe store of videos, that could be very helpful for helping you. Okay. I'm going to do the second one with you. And what the second one, actually, I'm going to ask a question. It says here, leave your answer correct to 2 decimal places. And that's code for telling you a secret message. I want to know, what is the secret message that is telling you?
Sorry, Mr. S, we've got a question here from Valerie.
Yes.
Valerie's asking, for question 1.1.1, could you not use the quadratic formula?
You could, Valerie. The only thing is, in the form that it's presented to originally, okay, it isn't in standard form. So you would then have to, Valerie, multiply this out, put it into standard form, and then use the formula. Whereas if you look at the second question, and you're kind of getting this, the second question is already in standard form, and it's telling you the answer must be correct to 2 decimal places. So what, Valerie, what's the secret message that's sending you? So what it's trying to tell you is that you must use the formula, because if you use the normal cross method, you won't be able to get normally decimal answers. So what we're going to do for this next one is, you need to know, this is on your formula sheet. You should have seen this formula before. It helps us solve every quadratic equation. Okay. Where A is the number in front here, that's B and that's C. And so all you need to do is make sure you know what values go where. And to solve the second question, you will go minus B. So it's -3 plus minus. Now, what often is quite helpful to do is to get a value for B squared minus 4AC on the side in a separate calculation. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, well, because B squared minus 4AC is what goes inside of the actual bracket. And so I often tell my students, don't try and do everything in one step. You often lose partial marks. And so I'm going to do a separate little calculation for, oh, that is too big. So I'm going to do a little separate calculation, B squared minus 4AC. And so 3 squared is 9. 9 minus 4 times by A is 7 times by C, which is -2. And don't be afraid to use your calculator, but hopefully I can ninja this. Let's see. 4 times 7 is 28. Times 2 is 56. Plus 9 is 65. But you can check me on that. So I then put 65 in here. And then the rest of the formula is 2 times A. What was A again? It was 7. So it's that. And so
Mr. S, can I just interrupt quickly? Should that not be 81 plus?
It might be.
Yeah, B squared should be, oh, no, you're absolutely correct.
Yeah, so 3 squared, yeah, all good. Okay, so I can actually look up the answer for you quickly. Let me just see if you guys got the right answer. If I can just find where did I hide the answers? I hid them somewhere down here. Give me a moment. So let's just quickly, the answers should be minus 0.79 and x equals 0.36. So I'll even, let me just, too many things. So can you see the answers there? So that is, and you can even see the marking memo. Can you see how you get a separate mark for substitution? And that's why I did it as a separate step, to make sure that was clear to my teacher. Okay. Let's move on to the next one. So I know students love this next one. Give me a thumbs up if you know how to do, or give me like a positive emoji if you know how to do surd equations. Give me a thumbs down if you don't know how to do surd equations. So I want some sort of indication. So you can even give a smiley face if you know how to do surd equations, and an unhappy face. But I just want a sense of who can do what, because 1.1.3 is that type of question. This is a surd equation. Anything, Coco? Oh. So
yes, I've got one set of answers. I've got a.
So do they say anything about are we getting mainly thumbs up or thumbs down or anything like
thumbs
that?
up, thumbs up mostly.
Okay, so I'm going to ask them then, please try and do this. In fact, try and do both of these questions so that this 1.1.3 is a surd equation. 1.1.4 is what's called an inequality. And I want you to try and do both of those. I want to give them about 4 minutes to try and do it. And then I'm going to come along and do it for them. And these are, I can almost guarantee you, these questions will be in your exam. I've taught for 15 years, almost every grade 11 paper starts with these 4 types of questions. So, if we can bank 20 marks for your exam today, that will be time well spent. Okay, so students, you are doing these 2, and then I will give some feedback in a moment, once you've had a time to try. I'm just going to grab some water. Oh. Just going to zoom out. Let's see. No, okay, I'll just do it here. So while you're doing 1.1.3, one tip I will give you is when you do surd equations, you always isolate the surd. So a really, really important first step is to do this. So you leave the x minus 1 with the surd bracket around it by itself, but you take away 3 from both sides, and what that leaves you with is that. Now, what makes a surd equation difficult is the fact that there's a surd. So you need to think, what is the thing that undoes the surd? What's the reciprocal process? Okay. And for those of you trying to do 1.1.4, a good first step is going to be to move everything to one side or multiply out. But ultimately, you want to get everything on one side like an equation. And so that's a good first step in terms of general technique for 1.1.4. Okay.
Mr. S, I think we're losing you on sound there a little bit.
Are you? Okay.
We couldn't quite hear that last comment.
Okay, let me switch to mobile data and see what happens. Is that any better?
Much, thank you.
Okay. Okay, so let's do this one. So the opposite of square rooting is squaring. And if I square both sides, so let's say like that, what I'm going to get is I'm going to get x minus 1 all by itself. And then I'm going to get x minus 3 squared on this side. And then I need to multiply this out. Now, there's a short way of doing this and a long way of doing this. Both are correct. If you know how to square a binomial, that's fine. But I would imagine a lot of you are probably just going to write it out in full like this, and then you have to multiply. Okay, so if we multiply, then we're going to go x times x is x squared minus 3x minus 3x. Move that the way. And then what's the last one? It's plus 9. And so let me roll this down. And now we've still got our x minus 1 on this side. Oh, cheapers. The wrong thing. Sorry, guys. I feel like I'm a ninja at the moment. So x squared minus 6x. It's quite a decent question. Okay, then the last step, you move everything across from the other side, and you should get x squared. Now, this plus x becomes a minus x, so I get minus 7x, and this minus 1 becomes a plus 1, so I get plus 10. Okay, now, once you've got that, you can either use the formula or you can use the cross method in order to factorize this. Okay, and then from there, you can get your final answers. Now, I'm because of time and because of not space, I'm actually just going to roll down to show you the answers. So you basically are going to get to, we got to that step, and then you factorize and you should get those answers. But in a surd equation, you also have to do what's called a check. And so you put the answers 2 and 5 back into the original equation and see if it makes it true. Now, for example, if you put 2 back into this equation, if you put it back into this, 2 minus 1 is a negative, and the square root of a negative is an imaginary number. So that actually isn't valid for grade 11 maths. And so you have to reject the answer, and the only answer is going to be x is 5. Okay, then the last question was the inequality one. And then I think we're going to get towards the end. So when we deal with inequalities, they're a lot like equations, except that they don't just have one answer. They have many, many different types of answers or regions of answers. But the first step will also be the same. So step 1 will be, let us multiply out the bracket and get 3x plus 18. Then move everything to one side. I normally like to get, so if you take away 3x from both sides and you take away 18 from both sides, you should get to this point. So x squared minus 3x minus 18 is greater than 0. So what this question is asking is it's saying, look, when is this graph above the x-axis? So if you were visualizing this graph, this is a parabola. And so a parabola is, like, I call it a happy graph. Or in fact, it's a happy graph if the number in front of the x squared is positive. So you're interested in knowing when basically is this graph above the x-axis, or another way of saying it is, when is this whole thing positive? And in order to know that, you actually need to know the 0 points or the 0 values, which would be these things here. And so what you need to do again is you can either do it by inspection or you can do it with the cross method, but essentially you need to get the factors. Now, because I've done quite a few of these, I can basically do it by just looking. I'm looking at the 18. I'm going, what are the factors of 18 that could get me to minus 3? And I'm guessing 6 and 3. So x minus 6 and x plus 3. So what we now know is that when x is 6, this thing is going to be 0. And when x is minus 3, this thing is going to be 0. And I'm interested in knowing, when is it positive? So again, I'm going to go down to the answers here just to help us, if they are here somewhere. Where are they? Ah, you know what? I'll just draw it. Let's get rid of this. So if you think about this parabola, so its 0 value is going to be when x is 6 or when x is minus 3. So where is minus 3? Minus 3 is here, and 6 is probably here. And we know this is a happy parabola. And if you look at my graph, I can see that it's only going to be positive over here and on this side. So basically it's between -3 and 6, it is going to be negative, but to the left of -3, it's positive, and to the right of 6, it's positive. So the answer we will give is x is less than -3, which is this region here, or x is greater than 6. And that will be our answer. Okay, well, let me leave it up for a moment. So those are the two pieces.